If you've watched any of my other videos. Today we're going to be looking at, the RFK Jr. confirmation hearing that was done yesterday. It's the first one. He is having a second one today as well, or it was today at 10 o'clock. Not sure if they're still in the meeting or not. I do believe that the hearing was live. Yeah. So if you're watching, please drop me a comment. If there's, anything that you would like to discuss or anything like that. So bear with me here, trying to get the chat pulled up just in case any of you do. I did have some difficulties yesterday. Yeah, so I was screen sharing and I was talking along and forgot to change my video. So, yeah. This live thing is pretty, it's easier for me to do this instead of recording and then editing and all of that stuff. So none of my videos are edited. I don't make any changes to them. They are live. They go immediately onto my YouTube channel. Is what it is. I am human. I am person. It is. So let's see if we can't get the show on the road. So bear with me here while I get some stuff changed over. And hopefully you all can see the whole screen. And then what we're going to do is we're going to listen to this a little bit, and we're going to talk about it as it goes. I watched some of it yesterday, the beginning part of it, myself, and I was a little bit disappointed by our representatives, especially when they start getting loud and start yelling at each other. We're supposed to be professional in this professional capacity, and I understand we're emotional, we're human, but if you're in a professional role, you should have a higher standard, in my opinion, and you shouldn't be yelling at the nominations. So yeah, let's take a listen here. Well, I thought I had it in the beginning. I think it's going to start here in a second. And just so you all know, this is directly on the Senate.gov. This is broadcasted live on, the Senate website. The one today is actually being broadcasted as well. So this is not coming from a news channel, CNN, NBC, any of that. This is coming directly from them. And if you come here, you can see the actual statements. So, Representative Mike Crapo, however you say his name, I'm very terrible with names. The representative from, it looks like, Idaho. You can actually see his full statement here if we pull it up in writing. Everything that he is saying right now is right here. So you can actually read it instead of just listening to it, if that makes it any easier for you if you're listening. Same thing with RFK Jr.'s opening statement. You can download his testimony. You can actually read it just for some extra information for you.
As a committee, we share a commitment to advancing common sense, bipartisan policy.
Let me restart it, because of course I forgot to push the button again.
Enhance access in rural communities, to expand the availability of telehealth and improve the broken clinician payment structure. Across these and other issues, I look forward to working with the administration to continue pursuing meaningful reforms that serve the American people more effectively and more efficiently. Too often, patients encounter a healthcare system that is disjointed and is a dysfunctional maze. Complex and bureaucratic chutes and ladders have become the norm. Meanwhile, even as healthcare spending climbs, outcomes across a range of conditions continue to decline. Mr. Kennedy, if confirmed, you will have the opportunity to chart a new and better course for the federal approach to tackling both the drivers and the consequences of our ailing healthcare system. Your commitment to combating chronic conditions that drive healthcare costs will be critical to our success. Prioritizing disease prevention and addressing the factors that fuel conditions such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, Alzheimer's disease, COPD, and cancer will save lives, reduce costs, and build a healthier, stronger country. Private sector breakthroughs from groundbreaking cancer medications to curative gene therapies also offer hope. But misguided government initiatives and market volatility risk eroding American leadership in life-saving R&D. Your advocacy for healthcare transparency has the potential to empower consumers across the country, promoting competition to enhance quality while cutting excessive spending for patients and for taxpayers. Today's hearing will provide a forum to hear more about your vision, particularly for the federal programs under this committee's jurisdiction. Mr. Kennedy, you represent a voice for an inspiring coalition of Americans who are deeply committed to improving the health and well-being of our nation. Regardless of political party, everyone in this room shares a common recognition that our current system has fallen short, as well as a common desire to make our country healthier. I look forward to today's conversation as well as your testimony, Mr. Kennedy. And now I recognize Senator Wyden for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The question before the Finance Committee this morning is whether Robert F. Kennedy should be trusted with the health and well-being of the American people. Committee staff have examined thousands of pages of statements, books, and podcast transcripts in a review of his record. The receipts show that Mr. Kennedy has embraced conspiracy theories, quacks, charlatans, especially when it comes to the safety and efficacy of vaccines. He has made it his life's work to sow doubt and discourage parents from getting their kids life-saving vaccines. It has been lucrative for him and put him on the verge of immense power. This is the profile of someone who chases money and influence wherever they lead, even if that may mean the tragic deaths of children and other vulnerable people. Now, Mr. Kennedy is fond of saying he's not making recommendations about whether parents should vaccinate their children. He's just asking questions and giving people choices. It's a slippery tactic to dodge any real responsibility for his words and actions. And it is, in my view, absurd coming from somebody who's trying to win confirmation for a job that is entirely about making recommendations. These recommendations are going to have life or death consequences for the American people. Mr. Kennedy, if you are confirmed, your recommendations determine which vaccines senior citizens get for free through Medicare. Your recommendation will determine which vaccines are given to millions of kids. Peddling these anti-vaccine conspiracy theories as our chief health officer is going to endanger the lives of kids and seniors across the nation. Just look at what happened when Mr. Kennedy inserted himself into an anti-vaccination crisis in the island nation of Samoa. He traveled there himself to push his views and pour fuel on the fire of a measles outbreak that began due to low vaccination rates. In the end, 83 Samoans died, mostly kids, from a disease that is easily preventable. Americans cannot afford to import this experiment to our great nation. On other healthcare matters, from abortion to universal health care, Mr. Kennedy has changed his views so often it is nearly impossible to know where he stands on so many of the basic issues that impact Americans' daily lives. In a gobsmacking statement of irresponsibility, in November 2023, Mr. Kennedy said that he wanted to pause infectious disease research for 8 years. Mr. Kennedy has indicated he's open to restricting access to the abortion medication mifepristone, which remains a primary target of the Republican crusade against reproductive freedom. I took this on back in 1990 when I chaired the first congressional hearing on the topic. The science was clear then. It's even clearer today. Mifepristone is safe. The only reason it's under question in 2025 is because people with a political agenda have been out lying about it. Women deserve to know if Mr. Kennedy will abuse his power as our country's chief health officer to essentially implement a national abortion ban by restricting access to the safe and legal medication. Meanwhile, as the Trump budget office threw the Medicaid program into chaos yesterday, Republicans in Congress are proposing deep cuts to the program that will rip away health care from millions of Americans who count on this vital lifeline. Cuts to Medicaid of this magnitude are going to jack up the cost of health insurance. It'll shutter nursing homes and rural hospitals, deprive seniors and Americans with disabilities of home-based care. That approach amounts to handing over our nation's health system to for-profit insurance companies who've made a fortune delaying and denying care. Mr. Kennedy has virtually no knowledge or experience in handling these issues. It leaves him unprepared to take on a crisis like the nation witnessed yesterday when the Trump budget office shut down the federal Medicaid payment portal. After a careful review of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s statements, actions, and views, materials that I have reviewed personally and closely, I've reached the conclusion that he should not be entrusted with the health and well-being of the American people. When he's taken every side of every issue, how can this committee and the American people believe he has anything to say? Let me close by saying I believe more strongly than ever, and I have specialized in healthcare during my time in public service, that we're at a turning point with regard to healthcare in America. If there's one word to describe Americans' feelings towards the healthcare system, it's disillusioned. At every single turn, people feel like they're rolling a load of dice, loaded dice, when they try to get healthcare. Americans are justifiably angry, fed up, and tired of a system that puts profits over patients. Instead of debating meaningful ways to improve Americans' health care, now the committee is being forced to relitigate settled science about vaccines and whether or not the federal government should help Americans get affordable health care. I know where Democrats on this Finance Committee stand when it comes to an agenda to lower costs and improve care. I must say, I cannot say the same about the nominee sitting in front of me. And let me acknowledge, finally, Mr. Chairman, Terry Mills, from Portland, Oregon, who is here to represent Nurses for America, and I'd like to enter a statement from her organization into the record at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
All right. So, the next thing is going to be Robert Kennedy in his opening statement. Now, you heard a bunch of basically information from the last representative stating all of the things that Robert Kennedy Jr. has said or done and things like that. Now, during this hearing, he is going to get to ask him questions, and we're going to pause during some of those parts and actually look up some of that information, because even though they share it verbally, they don't actually tend to share the physical content to actually show the American people where they got this information from, and we are just supposed to believe them. Healthcare is something that is a passion of mine, and it has been a passion of mine for a number of years. I worked in the healthcare industry since 2013. I started my degree in 2009. I have a bachelor's and a portion of my master's done. I decided not to finish with that, but in health administration. So the ins and outs of Medicaid, Medicare, insurance, how it works, I've been ingrained in that. I've done the billing. I've done the human resources portion. I've met with MCOs, or insurance companies, as you call them. I know most of the standards, at least for a couple of states. Medicaid and Medicare are federal funding. Yes, from my understanding, what I heard yesterday is a lot of the Medicaid across the country was basically paused, and no one could use it, which I'm sure they're going to do some kind of back billing. You have up to so many days in order to bill in most states for Medicaid. So even if they receive services while there was a pause, they're still going to be able to claim billing for that. There are some much needed changes that need to be done with those systems, and the way that things are set up now is just, it's not working. Okay, and it's costing the American people a lot of money. It's interesting to hear we talk about the science for reproductive freedoms for females, which obviously, I'm a female. So, I mean, it doesn't affect me personally, but I know of people it has. Information about, abortion rights. And we constantly want to talk about how the science has changed and it's improved for that, but yet the science on the vaccines supposedly hasn't changed. So it's a little confusing to me, and it would be nice if somebody would just explain why portions of science is allowed to change and other portions aren't, and why we believe certain ones and not other ones. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So if we're going to believe in science, not the science, then we need to look at the science community as a whole and understand that things are changing and things are evolving, but also there are some truths that during the course of history and science have been either proven true or false, right? So, yeah. So let's finish. Let's hear RFK's introduction, and I'm sure if I remember correctly, he's going to touch on some of those points that Representative Wyden was just talking about. So let's get to it.
Thank you, Ranking Member Wyden. Mr. Kennedy, in a few moments, you will be given the opportunity to make your opening statement and respond to these attacks and other questions that the members of this committee have. I would say that with regard to the attack on Medicaid that we just heard, that was a false attack. It's been proven false overnight. The Medicaid portal is operating efficiently today and was never intended to be shut down.
Would gentleman yield, since he's mentioned my name? There was a significant amount of time yesterday where there was bedlam across the country over the status of the Medicaid portals. I hope it's being corrected, but there were problems all through the day.
There certainly were attacks yesterday. The problem has been clarified, and the Medicaid portal is fully operational as we speak. Mr. Kennedy, before I turn the time over to you to share your opening statement, I would like to give you a brief introduction. The son of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and nephew of President John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr. has been an advocate for consumers since 1985. After graduating from Harvard University, Mr. Kennedy studied at the London School of Economics and received his law degree from the University of Virginia Law School and a master's degree in environmental law from Pace University. He has founded 2 advocacy groups and has spent the last 40 years working to restore and protect children's health. He was a former independent candidate in the 2024 presidential election, and President Trump nominated him this year to be in November of 2024 to be the HHS secretary. In announcing his nomination, President Trump stated, "Mr. Kennedy will restore these agencies to the traditions of gold standard scientific research and beacons of transparency and end the chronic disease epidemic and make America great and healthy again." Before you give your opening statement, Mr. Kennedy, I have 4 obligatory questions that we ask all nominees before this committee. First, is there anything that you are aware of in your background that might present a conflict of interest with the duties of the office to which you have been nominated?
All right. No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do you know of any reason, personal or otherwise, that would in any way prevent you from fully and honorably discharging the responsibilities of the office to which you have been nominated?
No, I do not.
Do you agree without reservation to respond to any reasonable summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you are confirmed?
Yes, I do.
And finally, do you commit to providing a prompt response in writing to any questions addressed to you by any senator of this committee?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And before you begin, if you would like to, you may introduce your wife and children.
Yes. My wife, Cheryl Hines, is here. My daughter, Kit Kennedy, my son, Bobby Kennedy, his wife, Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, and my nephew, Jackson Hines, is here, too.
We welcome you all. Thank you. You may proceed with your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Crapo, Ranking Member Wyden, and members of this distinguished committee, I'm humbled to be sitting here today as President Trump's nominee to oversee the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. I want to thank President Trump for entrusting me to deliver on his promise to make America healthy again. I also want to thank Cheryl and Kik and Bobby and all of my other children who are here today and all the many members of my large extended family for the love that they have so generously shared. Ours has always been a family that has been involved in public service, and I look forward to continuing that tradition. My journey into the issue of health began with my career as an environmental attorney, working with hunters and fishermen and mothers in the small town in the Hudson Valley and along the Hudson River. I learned very early on that human health and environmental injuries are intertwined. The same chemicals that kill fish make people sick also. Today, Americans' overall health is in grievous condition. Over 70% of adults and a third of children are overweight or obese. Diabetes is 10 times more prevalent than it was during the 1960s. Cancer among young people is rising by 1 or 2% a year. Autoimmune diseases, neurodevelopmental disorders, Alzheimer's, asthma, ADHD, depression, addiction, and a host of other physical and mental health conditions are all on the rise, some of them exponentially. The United States has worse health than any other developed nation, yet we spend more on health care, at least double, and in some cases triple, as other countries. Last year, we spent $4.8 trillion, not counting the indirect costs of missed work. That's almost a fifth of GDP. It's tantamount to a 20% tax on the entire economy. No wonder America has trouble competing with countries that pay a third of what we do for health and have better outcomes and a healthier workforce. But I don't want to make this too much about money. It's the human tragedy that moves us to care. President Trump has promised to restore America's global strength and to restore the American dream, but he understands we can't be a strong nation when our people are so sick. A healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person has only one. Today, over half of our countrymen and women are chronically ill. When I met with President Trump last summer, I discovered that he is more than just concern for this tragic situation, but genuine care. President Trump is committed to restoring the American dream, and 77 million Americans delivered a mandate to him to do just that, due in part to the embrace and elevation of the Make America Healthy Again movement. This movement, led largely by Maha moms from every state, you can see many of them behind us today, and in the hallways and in the lobbies, is one of the most transcendent and powerful movements I've ever seen. I promise President Trump that if confirmed, I will do everything in my power to put the health of Americans back on track. And I've been greatly heartened to discover a deep level of care among members of this committee, too, both Democrats and Republicans. I came away from our conversations confident that we can put aside our divisions for the sake of a healthier America. For a long time, the nation has been locked in a divisive healthcare debate about who pays. Well, when healthcare costs reach 20%, there are no good options, only bad ones. Shifting the burden around between government and corporations and insurers and providers and families is like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Our country will sink beneath a sea of desperation and debt if we don't change the course and ask, why are healthcare costs so high in the first place? The obvious answer is chronic disease. The CDC says 90% of healthcare spending goes toward managing chronic disease, which hits lower-income Americans the hardest. The president's pledge is not to make some Americans healthy again, but to make all of our people healthy again. There is no single culprit in chronic disease. Much as I have criticized certain industries and agencies, President Trump and I understand that most of their scientists and experts genuinely care about American health. Therefore, we will bring together all stakeholders in pursuit of this unifying goal. Before I conclude, I want to make sure the committee is clear about a few things. News reports have claimed that I'm anti-vaccine or anti-industry. I am neither. I am pro-safety.
Just a comment here. There are individuals that are allowed to be in the hearing, and so they're allowed to watch it in person. They're generally sitting behind that rope there that you see. Everyone else that's here is generally involved with the government in some form or fashion, it looks like. And the individual, it sounded like she shouted, the individual, and I don't want to say she, but whoever the individual was, shouted, yeah, you are, in reference to him saying that he's not anti-vax. Now, if you are going to go to these hearings, this is a formal hearing. There is a time and a place for protesting. There's a time and a place to be shouting. I don't think that this is acceptable, but that is my opinion. Yes, we all have the First Amendment right to speak, but that's just rude. And there are people who are trying to listen to this hearing and trying to understand, because this makes a difference who is hired in this position and who is confirmed for this position. And you are interrupting, and it is causing a disturbance for the entire committee, which in turn takes camera focus, as you can tell, away from the speaker who is actually there to get a job done. Later on, you're going to see in the video it's going to happen again, and again, the focus is going to be taken away. By all means, please wait until after it's over with, then express your disdain, your upsetness, your disagreements, whatever else it is that is bothering you. But please don't be rude and interrupt, because it's not just you there. There could be millions of people that are trying to watch this and are trying to understand what is going on, and you are interrupting it for the rest of us. So please stop being rude. Do it another time. There's a time and a place to express your grievances. During a congressional confirmation hearing is probably not the good spot to do it. Let's continue.
We'll have order. Please proceed, Mr. Kennedy.
I am pro-safety. I worked for years to raise awareness about the mercury and toxic chemicals in fish, and nobody called me anti-fish. And I believe that that vaccines play a critical role in healthcare. All of my kids are vaccinated. I've written many books on vaccines. My first book in 2014, the first line of it is, I am not anti-vaccine, and the last line is, I am not anti-vaccine. Nor am I the enemy of food producers. American farms are the bedrock of our culture, of our politics, of our national security. I was a 4-H kid, and I spent my summer working on ranches. I went to work with our farmers. I want to work with our farmers and food producers to remove burdensome regulations and unleash American ingenuity. MAHA simply cannot succeed without a partnership, a full partnership of American farmers. In my advocacy, I've often disturbed the status quo by asking uncomfortable questions. Well, I'm not going to apologize for that. We have massive health problems in this country that we must face honestly. And the first thing I've done every morning for the past 20 years is to get on my knees and pray to God that He would put me in a position to end the chronic disease epidemic and to help America's children. That's why I'm so grateful to President Trump for the opportunity to sit before you today and seek your support and partnership in this endeavor. I will conclude with a promise. The members of this committee, to the President, and to all the tens of millions of parents across America, especially the moms, who have propelled this issue to center stage. Should I be so privileged as to be confirmed, we will make sure our tax dollars support healthy foods. We will scrutinize the chemical additives in our food supply. We will remove financial conflicts of interest from our agencies. We will create an honest, unbiased, gold standard science at HHS, accountable to the President, to Congress, and to the American people. We will reverse the chronic disease epidemic and put the nation back on the road to good health. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, I will begin. Each of us will have 5 minutes to ask you questions, and then at the conclusion of the hearing, if there are further questions, there will be an opportunity for those questions to be submitted to you, and I ask.
All right, so we're about to get into some of the questions, and if you see me looking down, I'm just making some notes. So when I go to Google and look up this information and see if we can actually find the documentation that they're referencing to see if they're being honest, this includes videos and podcasts and things like that. because there's going to be quite a few references. And to be quite honest, like I said in my intro video, if you watched it, and if you haven't watched it, go check it out. Drop me a comment, like, share, subscribe. At this point, I don't have any advertisements on my video, so you might as well like, share, subscribe, join now, and you can watch all of my videos without any interruptions, which is fantastic in my opinion, because I have YouTube myself, and a lot of the videos have so many dang commercials, it's not even funny. Now, I'm not saying that it won't happen in the future at some point, because it very well might, but at this point, it's probably a good idea to start now. But yeah, so we're going to take a look, because they always leave bits and pieces out. Like, we are not smart enough to go look up the information and see if they're telling little white lies or fibbing or just downright lying about the things. So we are going to dig into it. We are going to look up the information, read the information. Basically, we're going to kind of fact check ourselves this information. I know there's fact checkers out there, and there's other sources for fact checking, but again, they're major sources, and if the COVID pandemic taught us anything, it's that some of those fact checkers aren't exactly fact checking properly, or it's a play on words, depending on how it's asked or depending on how it's said. It's very disingenuous, in my opinion. So let's get into what some of these questions are.
That you respond to them promptly. Mr. Kennedy, you have emphasized the importance of nutrition in preventing and managing chronic disease, improving health outcomes, and reducing health costs. I share your interest in the relationship between our diet and our well-being. And if confirmed, I look forward to partnering with you on those efforts. Would you share with the committee why you are passionate about the nutrition-oriented disease prevention and what you have learned?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I had 11 brothers and sisters. I had dozens of first cousins. I was raised in a time where we did not have a chronic disease epidemic. When my uncle was president, 2% of American kids had chronic disease. Today, 66% have chronic disease. We spend zero on chronic disease during the Kennedy administration. Today, we spend $4.3 trillion a year. With 77% of our kids cannot qualify for military service. When I was a kid, the typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes in his or her lifetime, 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his or her office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And the most recent data from NIH shows 38% of teens are diabetic or pre-diabetic. Autism rates have gone from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 1,500, depending on what studies you look at. In my generation today, 70-year-old men, 1 in 34 in my kids' generation. We've seen this explosion of autoimmune disease, of allergic diseases. This is not just a economic issue. It's not just a national security issue. It is a spiritual issue, and it is a moral issue. We cannot live up to our role as an exemplary nation, as a moral authority around the world, and we're writing off an entire generation of kids.
Thank you very much. And if confirmed, how could we work together to integrate nutrition-based interventions into our healthcare programs like Medicaid and Medicare?
Well, there are many ways that we can do that. The federal funding of the SNAP program, for example, and of school lunch programs could be a driver for helping kids. We shouldn't be giving 60% of the kids in school processed food that is making them sick. We shouldn't be spending 10% of the SNAP program on sugar drinks. So we have a direct ability to change things there. We also, in Medicaid and Medicare, we need to focus more on outcome-based medicine, on putting people in charge of their own health care, of making them accountable for their own health care so they understand the relationship between eating and getting sick. most importantly, we need to deploy NIH and FDA to doing the research to understand the relationship between these different food additives and chronic disease so that Americans understand it and make sure that Americans are aware of it. I don't want to take food away from anybody. If you like a cheeseburger, a McDonald's cheeseburger, a Diet Coke, which my boss loves, and you should be able to get them. If you want to eat Hostess Twinkies, you should be able to do that. But you should know what the impacts are on your family and on your health.
Thank you. Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin my questions, I'd like to start by entering into the record a letter the committee received from Ambassador Carolyn Kennedy outlining what she believes is Mr. Kennedy's lack of personal fitness for the office.
Without objection.
Now, see, it would be lovely if, when we're entering things into the record, if we could see those as American people. Yeah, they can see them, but you know what? Like, we can't see them. Where is this information? What happened to the Freedom of Information Act? Like, where's the transparency? Show us what you're talking about. Because otherwise, all I'm seeing is them handing you a piece of paper. Now, if somebody knows where this information is at, by all means, please drop a comment and tell me where it's at so I can look it up and so I can show everyone. But right now, like, I do not see it on the screen. I don't believe I saw it yesterday when I was watching, but we'll continue.
Mr. Kennedy, you have spent years pushing conflicting stories about vaccines. You say one thing, and then you say another. In your testimony today under oath, you denied that you were anti-vaccine. But during a podcast interview in July of 2023, you said, quote, no.
So that was July of 2023 podcast. But of course, he didn't say which one.
No vaccine is safe and effective. In your
And he said, no vaccine is safe and effective, is what he just quoted.
Your testimony today, in order to prove you're not anti-vax, you note that all your kids are vaccinated. But in a podcast in 2020, you said, and I quote, you would do anything.
Another podcast. He didn't give us the month that time, so podcast 2020, and he's going to quote you again. He's going to quote Robert F. Kennedy Jr. again.
Pay anything to go back in time and not vaccinate your kids.
So he said, quote, I would do anything to go back in time.
Kids. Mr. Kennedy, all of these things cannot be true. So, are you lying to Congress today when you say you are pro-vaccine? Or did you lie on all those podcasts? We have all of this on tape, by the way.
Yeah, Senator, as you know, because it's been repeatedly debunked, that statement that I made on the Lex Friedman podcast.
Now, see, Mr. Kennedy gives us the podcast that he's talking about. So,
was a fragment of the statement. He asked me, and anybody who actually goes and looks at that podcast and will see this. He asked me, are there vaccines that are safe and effective? And I said to him, some of the live virus vaccines are. And I said, there are no vaccines that are safe and effective, and I was going to continue for every person. Every medicine has people who are sensitive to them, including vaccines.
Right, so
he interrupted me at that point. I've corrected it many times, including on national TV. You know about this, Senator Wyden, so bringing this up right now is dishonest.
let
all right. So, let's go see if we can find this podcast. Robert Kennedy Jr., July 2023. 3 podcast. Let's try transcript. Lex Freeman, I do believe, is who Robert Kennedy said. All right. This is the transcript. The timestamps in the transcript are clickable links that take you directly to the point in the main video. Please note the transcript is human generated, may have errors. There are some useful links. All right, so not seeing. All right, looks like we're gonna have to do an old-fashioned search here. Let's look up vaccine. All right. So what we're doing is we're going to see if we can't find that quote that they're talking about here. And if you see here, just in the transcript, right, that Mr. Wyden was talking about here, he goes on to say Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at 1:55:55 says, I think some of the live virus vaccines are probably averting more problems than they're causing. There's no vaccine that is safe and effective. In fact, he was going to keep going, like he said. And then he didn't, because Lex Freeman interrupted. Those are big words. Robert Kennedy, ... Those are big words. What about the polio? Let's start with the... And then they continued. Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem. Yeah, here's the problem. Polio vaccine contained virus called Simian virus 40, SV40. It's one of the most carcinogenic materials that is known to man. In fact, it is used now by scientists around the world to introduce tumors and rats and guinea pigs in labs. But it was in that vaccine, 98 million people who got that vaccine. And in my generation got it. And now you've had this explosion of soft tissue cancers in our generation that killed many, many, many more people than polio ever did. So if you say to me the polio vaccine was effective against polio, I'm going to say yes. And if say to me, did it cause more death than avert? I would say I don't know, because we don't have enough data on that. Which, if you think about it, if those individuals who got the vaccine back then are still alive, we're still collecting data on what that vaccine potentially did, is what he's saying, right? Because according to science and the doctors and the CDC, when you get the vaccines, they stay in your system. So how long did they test them for? Are we still looking at the data? Like, can anything be linked back? We don't know. These are questions. And from what I can tell, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is asking the questions, as well as people asking him questions. So that was the first podcast that was referenced, where they're trying to take out of context, but not really, because in this he did not correct it, because he did stop where it says in fact, and he didn't go back and clarify. Unfortunately, it sounds like that's on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for doing that. Let's see if we can't find this other podcast. Robert Kennedy Jr. 2020 podcast. Regarding children being vaccinated. Now, I'm not using the ChatGPT because oftentimes it won't give you the correct answers. And I say that for a reason, because at some point I will probably do a video explaining with screenshots of a time that I actually talked to ChatGPT and it flat out lied. Like, flat out lied. And tried to gaslight me and say that I did not see with my own two eyes what I saw. So, that's another video for another day. Okay, so just typing that in, as you can see, they're already talking about that statement. Fox 9, Health Policy Watch. Oh, I don't know that we're going to be able to find that podcast without more information. And this is the problem with them not giving us enough information on, Mr. Wyden says that he's got copies of these transcripts. Okay, provide them for the American people as well, and where you got it. Please cite your sources. Because it's very disingenuous to the American people not to cite your sources so we can go witness them for our own eyes and our own ears. Like, that's not fair. We, as American people, are smart enough to look into this information and make a judgment ourselves. Okay? We don't need you and the federal government telling us what to think and believe all of the time. We can go do it. Still not finding the podcast. Maybe if I change up the wording a little bit. Nope. It's Fox 9. $50 ago. See, they're fact checking already for his second day of the confirmation hearing, which is today, and they're already fact checking it. Like, okay, you go ahead and fact check. That's fine. But I personally am not going to believe fact checkers anymore because of the whole COVID nonsense. And very disingenuous. So I would just go look up the information myself. You're more than welcome to come to my channel and look up watch me look up the information. So watch me show you where I find this information. See, they're giving the statements, but they're not providing me with where this podcast was. Which podcast in 2020 are you talking about? I'll probably have to dig into it some more. If I find it, I will post the link. All right, let's continue watching, and you're going to hear them get pretty loud, which, like I said in the beginning of this video, is, in my opinion, it should be unacceptable for leaders in our government to act this way. You do not get to yell at someone who's been nominated to come before this committee.
Let's be clear about what you've actually done then, since you want to deny your statements. For example, you have a history of trying to take vaccines away from people. In May of 2021, you petitioned the Food and Drug Administration to not only block Americans from having access to the COVID vaccine, but to prevent any future access to the life-saving vaccine. Are you denying that? Your name is...
All right, so he's getting ready to start yelling. Let's go see if we can find this petition. What do you say? 2021 vaccine petition. All right, it's ABC News. see if we can find the actual document. That would be nice. Don't think this is it. No, it doesn't look like it's it. Alright. Alright, just for giggles, let's see what ABC News has got to say. Let's see if they actually provide us with a copy of the petition here. So far, nope, nothing. All right, where is this petition exactly? And why can't we see it? I would like to read the petition, and I would like for everybody to be able to see the petition. Let's try this a different way, because Google likes to not show us what we're looking for. To find... I don't think this is going to be it, but we'll see. That's just supporting him for the nomination. That's not what we're looking for. Still not finding it. See what this brief is. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. There's no date. No date. Well, that's a petition. It's got his name on it, but it has to do with exemptions. And looks like trying to appeal it or change it. Still not finding that petition that he was talking about, though. And it looks like there's a lot of people. Google's only showing me, it looks like people who are not in favor of RFK Jr. Doctors, other prominent people. However, since when is it up to doctors and prominent people on who is confirmed into their position into our government? We, the people, should have a say, and that's the whole reason why we elect our officials, and the officials are supposed to be our voice in the government, not just corporations and insurance companies and doctors who are profiting off of the decisions that are made in our government. So, our congressmen and women, our congress people, should be following along with what their constituents want. Like this thing about just listening to a select group of people has got to stop at some point. There's a lot of things that need to stop at some point. Why are we listening to the 1% of people when it affects the whole? Because what's good for 1% may not be good for the other 99%. And I'm sorry if you fall into the 1% category. I really do. But everybody else shouldn't have to follow what the 1% needs at all. So let's keep watching for a few more minutes. And then we may do a part 2 because we've been going for a while. And we're only 46 minutes in. I know the first 15 minutes of it wasn't really anything, but we're not going to watch the whole thing in one video. That's crazy.
Is on the petition.
There you go.
We brought that petition after CDC recommended the COVID vaccine without any scientific basis for 6-year-old children. Most experts agree today, even the people who did it back then, that COVID vaccines are inappropriate for 6-year-old children who basically have a zero risk from COVID. That's why I brought that lawsuit. I don't want to. I want to emphasize
Mr. Kennedy, the facts.
I don't.
The facts.
And here it is again, the shouting. I don't know why this individual.
The committee will be in
doesn't
order.
earlier. It's rude. It's disrespectful.
And to the audience,
And it's taking away from the
Senator, I'm
congressional
not
hearing.
against
if you'll hold
vaccine.
off for a second, Mr. Kennedy, to the audience. Comments from the audience are inappropriate and out of order.
Thank you.
And if there are any further disruptions, the committee will recess until the police can restore order. Please follow the rules of the committee. Mr. Kennedy, you may proceed.
Right,
I also want to point out that your
It's not open.
recitation
public discussion.
of what happened in Samoa is absolutely wrong, and you know it's wrong, and you know it's wrong.
We'll get to that in a moment. Right now, we're talking about the petition that you filed to block Americans from having access to the vaccine and to prevent any future access to the vaccine. Those facts are on the record. My third question to you is,
Where are these
you
facts?
made almost $5 million from book deals, mostly promoting junk science. In 2021, in a book called
All right, and you see they've got little billboards here. Measles book, Sky Horror Publishing, 10/19/21. Yeah. Looks like they had another poster right before that. Let's see if I can...
The committee will be in order. And to the audience,
Senator, I'm not against
if you'll
vaccine.
hold off for a second, Mr. Kennedy, to the audience. Comments from the audience are inappropriate and out of order. And if there are any further disruptions, the committee will recess until the police can restore order. Please follow the rules of the committee. Mr. Kennedy, you may proceed.
I also want to point out that your recitation
You see the
of
poster back there?
what happened in Samoa is absolutely wrong, and you know it's wrong, and you know it's
We'll
wrong.
get to that in a moment. Right now, we're talking about the petition that you filed to block Americans from having access to the vaccine and to prevent any future access to the vaccine. Those facts are on the record. My third question to you is, you made almost...
All right. Look. Oh, so that poster didn't even really do anything. It's just all of RFK Jr.'s books that he's posted, or that he's written based off of his research. So, why is somebody researching vaccines such a problem? If the vaccines... riddle me this. if the vaccines are so safe and so effective, which I'm not an anti-vaxxer, I'm fully vaccinated. My children are fully vaccinated. I will tell you, I did not get the COVID vaccination. There's just, for me personally, there's just not enough data to support it. There was too many disingenuous misinformation being spread, and I just couldn't take that chance. It's my personal opinion. Not saying anyone else should or shouldn't. That's your own personal thing between you and your doctor and what you and your family needs. But if somebody questions a vaccine, why can't you just answer it? Why can't you just give us the information? Why are we just supposed to blindly trust you, who I've never met before in my life, to make a decision about my health and my children's health and force me to do it and make it mandatory? Why? Why can't I question what is being entered into my body that may potentially stay there for life? There's already, articles and videos about PFAs right now. And we had no idea that PFAs were a thing. These are forever chemicals, supposedly, the information that I've seen. But we're not allowed to question the vaccine companies? Why? Why are we not allowed to question the vaccine companies? Why are we not allowed to question our government? Why is Robert R.F. Kennedy Jr., who has got the resources and the funding to look into this deeper than the average person like myself, why is it not okay for him to do the research and for him to post his research information? Scientists do it all the time. People who are in college do it for their dissertations. They post peer-reviewed studies. It is okay for them to do it, but not Robert F. Kennedy. I don't understand. If someone can explain to me why we're not allowed to question things that are going on in our lives, that would be great. I am going to continue questioning. That is my nature. I know a lot of people out there are going to keep questioning. By all means, come to my channel. We'll question together. We'll look it up together. We can do our own research. We can tell for ourselves what is good information, what is not good information. And we can make an educated decision about our lives, about our bodies, about our health in the manner that we see fit. I don't see where we need the government to tell us what to do all of the time. And why does the government feel that it has to continuously look out for my safety? I'm not asking you to do that. And I don't know of anybody else who's asking to do that. And that's anecdotal, and that is my opinion. But I know that there's lots of people that are out there that feel the same way. We need less government interference, not more. And on that note, I think now's a good enough spot to take a break, stop, reassess. I'm not going to be overly emotional about this, but healthcare is a passion of mine. And it's very easily researchable. There's peer-reviewed articles online that you can look up and read for yourself. Problem is a lot of them are in verbiage that is medical jargon, and medical jargon is in Latin, especially when you're talking about specific diseases, specific body parts, names, things like that. They're in Latin. So they make it very difficult for the average person to understand what's going on, which in turn forces the average person to have no choice but to trust the medical providers. However, the medical providers are now for profit and not for health in most cases, in my opinion. They slam pack their schedule as full as they can get it. I can't even get into my doctor's office for a sick visit for several days, and I live in a rural town where we have 2 doctor's offices in our town. That's it. Everything else we have to travel, about 20 to 30 minutes for. But we don't leave any slots available for sick visits because the insurance companies have basically, if you go look how many hospitals are owned by the insurance companies, you'd be surprised. You really would. And a lot of the insurance companies are now also starting to be a third party to Medicaid and Medicare. So not only do they do private insurance, but they also do Medicaid and Medicare. So it doesn't matter if it's private. They're going to have their hand in everything. They own the hospitals. They are doing all sorts of things, and we're just supposed to blindly trust them. They deny care. They deny procedures still because they have somebody in administration. They get the pre-authorization from the doctor. Somebody reviews the information and says, no, we don't think that you actually need that. So we're going to deny it even though your doctor says that you do. And your doctor is the one that has been treating you for however long the doctor's been treating you for. The doctor sees you personally and has recommended this. And the insurance companies say, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to approve that. You need to try this other stuff. And we don't get to say no to that. We have to try the other stuff before we can actually have the procedure or whatever it is that we need. So there's many topics in healthcare that can be touched on, from abortion to Medicaid to Medicare to private insurance to Obamacare to Trump trying to end Obamacare, Medicaid pricing, drug pricing. It's all areas of government are huge and vast, and they have their hand in everything. So many videos to come. We'll see if we can't finish this video a little later. I'm gonna take a break for now. So yeah, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks.